What's going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops. Today we're doing part 2, teams 90 to 81 on our 10-part series of teams that should be added in the 2K20. Also, just for the record, the thumbnail is not going to foreshadow what's going to be in each video because I don't want to give away spoilers, but it will be throughout this whole series. So without further ado, let's just get started. So at number 90, we had the 74-75 Kansas City Omaha Kings. This team was led by Nate Archibald. You know, obviously he's a Hall of Famer. Also got Scott Webman, who was pretty solid at the Kings. Then you also got Sam Lacey down low at center. And then some guys like Jimmy Walker, Ron Behagen, and Nate Williams, just to name some of the others, which, you know, it's kind of hard to get an idea for who they are because, I mean, they were so long ago. But they were 44-38, which was third in the West. Lost in the West semifinals 4-2. And I want to give a shout out actually to the 80-81 Kansas City Kings because I was tempted to put them. They had Otis Birdsong and Phil Ford at their starting backcourt. I was really tempted to put them because they also got to the West Finals and lost 4-1, and they were the 5th seed in the West at 40-42. But hey, I would like this Nate Archibald and Scott Wedman team. At 89, we got the 2006-2007 Chicago Bulls. This team had Kirk Heinrich at the point guard position. Ben Gordon was the leading scorer for this team at shooting guard. Also had Luol Deng, he was a pretty solid guy on this team. PJ Brown was the power forward, and then Ben Wallace was the man inside getting all the rebounds and playing the D. Also had Andres Nocioni off the bench. This team was 49-33, which is good enough for 5th in the Eastern Conference. And they lost in the East semifinals 4-2. Pretty solid team, just a few years before they would get D Rose and Joakim Noah, so I had to put them on the list. At 88, we got the 2013-2014 Charlotte Bobcats, which was actually the last season for the Bobcats. They had a young Kemba Walker at that time. They also had Al Jefferson, who made All-NBA third team that year. Then they just had some serviceable role players like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Gerald Henderson was on the team, and then just a few other guys like Gary Neal, Josh McRoberts, to name a few. This team was 43-39, which was 7th in the Eastern Conference, and they lost in the East first round 4-0 to the Miami Heat. But they did make the playoffs, which is pretty amazing for the Bobcats. They only did it twice under the name of the Bobcats, so I thought this would be a good team to put in. At 87, we got the 1971-1972 Phoenix Suns. This team had Charlie Scott playing the point guard position. They were really led by Connie Hawkins, who was their main go-to guy. And they also had guys like Paul Silas, who wasn't too bad. And then also Dick Van Arsdale, who was a pretty solid role player at that time. This team didn't make the playoffs, but they were 49-33, which is good for 5th in the West. A team that good that didn't make the playoffs, I had to at least put them in the top 100. At 86, we have the 1987-1988 Dallas Mavericks. This team was led by Mark Aguirre, who averaged 25 points a game. Also Rolando Blackman, who was pretty solid as well. I think he averaged just under 20. Derek Harper was the main facilitator on this team. Sam Perkins was also not bad, a good three-point shooter for a big man. And then James Donaldson was surprisingly an all-star. I don't really know how, but he made the all-star team for this specific season. And then Roy Tarpley was a 6th man of the year off the bench. This team also had some other people in 2K, like Brad Davis and Detlef Schrempf, so it'd be perfect for the game. They were actually 53-29, which is good for 3rd in the Western Conference. And they made the Western Conference Finals and just lost 4-3. So they were one game from the NBA Finals. So this team definitely deserves some recognition by 2K. At 85, we're going to have the Phoenix Suns from 2013-2014. This team doesn't look great on paper, but they were pretty good. They had Eric Bledsoe and Goran Dragic at the backcourt. They also had PJ Tucker running the 3 at the time. Channing Frye was at the 4, and then Miles Plumlee, who had his best season yet, at the 5. And they also had Jill Green off the bench, who was arguably their 3rd, maybe 4th best player. This team didn't make the playoffs, however, but They won 48 games, and they were 9th in the Western Conference. Pretty amazing feat just by looking at the roster on paper. So I got to give them some recognition and put them in the top 100. So at number 84, we're going to have the 1991-1992 Miami Heat. This team low-key had a big three of Glenn Rice, a young Steve Smith, and Ronnie Cycli. They also had some quality role players such as Brian Shaw. They also had Grant Long, and then they also had Bimbo Coles, who was probably their best player off the bench. This team, record-wise, was not great, 38-44, which was 8th in the East, and they lost in the first round 3-0. But they would be a very fun team to use in 2K. I think one of the better teams that we'd have that didn't have too much success. At 83, we got the 2005-2006 Sacramento Kings. Mike Bibby was just about the last guy from the 2002 team on this squad. They also had Bonzi Wells and Ron Artest playing the 2 and 3 respectively. Then they had Kenny Thomas at the 4 and Brad Miller to stretch the floor at the 5 spot. And they also had Kevin Martin as a rookie off the bench. This team was 44-38, which is 8th in the Western Conference. And they lost in the first round in 6 games. But I think Kings fans would like this team because this was actually the last time the Kings have made the playoffs. So it'd be kind of a good refresh. At number 82 on the list, we got the 1973-1974 Detroit Pistons. Mainly, I just wanted to put this team on here because of their duo. They had Dave Bing running the point guard spot, and then they had Bob Lanier running at the center. Many of their other guys, like they had Chris Ford, they had Don Adams at small forward, Curtis Rowe at power forward, and Stu Lance off the bench, are just mediocre players. But this team was good enough to get 52 wins on the season, which is good enough for the 4th seed in the Western Conference. They ended up reaching the Western Conference semifinals where they eventually lost 4-3. But just a duo of 2 Hall of Fame players seems like it would be perfect for 2K. At number 81, we got the 1950-1951 Rochester Royals, a pretty older team. I'm going to try and put into perspective each role of these guys. So first, you got Bob Davies. He was kind of like a Chauncey Billups type. You know, he's not a high assist dude, but he's not like an elite scorer, I would say. But he was one of their leading scorers. Then you also got Bobby Wanzer, who could kind of do everything at like a shooting guard spot. I guess you can kind of compare him to a little bit like Manu Ginobili. Then you had Jack Coleman at power forward, and he was a pretty high assist guy. So for that, I would have to compare him to a Joakim Noah because he also was a double-double dude. And then Arnie Rison was probably their best player. He would get a lot of rebounds, and he was undersized as well, probably like 6'8", 6'9", I think. And one person that comes to my mind is Kevin Love, kind of like Timberwolves Kevin Love in a way, where he would just get crazy stats. But this team was 41-27 on the season because back then I guess they played 68 games. 2nd in the Western Conference. They won the NBA Finals in 7 games, so I have to credit an NBA championship team. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment your opinions or whatever you disagreed or agreed with. And also subscribe to the channel because this is the type of content that I like to make if you already haven't subscribed. Also, my Twitter and Instagram, I've made new social media pages for my actual YouTube channel. So you can check them out. I'll put them on the screen. And also in the comments, if you guys want, you can try and guess because as I mentioned in the first episode, there's like 5 teams that didn't make the playoffs that I have on this whole list. And if you've been paying attention, 4 of them have already been named. So if you can try and guess which one of those teams is left, because there's only 1 left, then go ahead and go right at it. But I think that's going to be it for me for this episode. And I'll see you guys on the next one.